Okay, people, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Council, you have an agenda on front of you, and you've had that for some time. Do we have a motion? Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Evans. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. We have the agenda. Open to questions. Question from the audience?
Yes, I have a question for the Mayor and Council. The question that I have is getting half-truths from town employees when you ask specific questions and they keep going around and around them and never give you a clear answer, and then down the road you find out that they didn't do something that they said they did in the first place. So how do we get our staff to tell the public the truth, or the councillors?
So the staff report through the CAO to us, so it's our responsibility to get accurate reports. So it would rest with us if you feel there is not there shouldn't be direct indication of things that are incorrect. There may be direct communication of stuff we're not clear of yet, if we don't yet know what that answer is. That could happen. But if you're seeking a specific answer, I would suggest perhaps you ask us as on council what your particular area of interest is that you think you're not getting a clear answer on.
Well, the one that I have is the Lorne Street drainage. And we were told that Crandall's did a complete study and work up on the best way to get the water off of Lorne Street. And as a citizen, I'm not allowed to ask Crandall's any questions. So the only ones that we could talk to was your town engineer, and he assured us that everything was checked out. Then at the previous council meeting, he got up and said, well, why would we spend money looking at that? We never even looked at that, after he told us that they had checked and done a thorough job.
Well, I think there's two elements to that. One is that they appeared in a public hearing where they said they looked at what three options there may be and indicated that at a regular level, in an environmental assessment, which is something I have a background in, you look at what those options would be in terms of what's your objective, does it meet it, what's the cost, is there a rough estimate, how effective and efficient is it environmentally acceptable, will it get it through a referral process, etc. So that, I understood, was the level of look at what the alternatives would be. And the presentation to the province under the EIA, which the province then accepted, was under your criteria, this is the only route that meets all of the criteria. And so that is why they came back, the province came back and approved the terms and conditions attached to that method, which is why we then went into more detail and created the tender. So I think there may be a difference between an expectation of a full review, while normally what it is you focus down on what is the most practical element and then get that full review. And that's what led to the response to the tender. So there may be a difference in what you expected a full review of those other alternatives to be versus what the environmental assessment process would require.
It couldn't have been too good of a result because the tender came in for twice what they figured it would cost to do the job. So yeah. Somebody wasn't doing a very good job of figuring out the cost of things on the town's behalf, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we were all surprised at that. You're absolutely right. But as we noted, the terms of what we had thought they would be came out differently after the environmental impact assessment, which changed the nature of some of the work that had to be done. But we couldn't change our budget. We'd already got the budget from the province and the feds. So some of it was a surprise, but some of it was also created by the terms of the environmental assessment.
What do you mean we couldn't change our budget after we've asked the question and it came out twice of what we thought it was going to cost, we still can't do anything? We still have to proceed?
Oh, no, we're now looking to see if we can go ahead, but we had signed a cost-shared agreement in 2017, late 2017, after the province had asked us to apply for Phase 2. We applied for Phase 2. Department of Transportation and Infrastructure asked us to apply. They approved our approval. They approved the money for that project. So that was the budget we had to go forward. Then the environmental assessment took place. Some of those things under the environmental assessment changed the nature of the dike and the way in which the pond would be built and the way in which the ditches would be built. All of those ended up costing a lot more than the budget that was in the original mission. So you're right. We now have to go back if we wish to pursue that and ask for more money from the infrastructure fund, or we have to find another way with the existing money in that infrastructure fund to do the second best job.
You say we can't change anything, but we are going to change something. We're going to go to the quarry now instead of spending the money on Lorne Street. Well, this is what I'm getting out of the meetings and the proposals that I've been to. Right. And so you're like, at one time you can't change it, but then you can change it.
Well, we will have to go back with an alternative design that meets not as well as we had originally hoped, but meets second best under those funds. We have also indicated to them that this is how much more it would cost if you wanted to do what you approved we could do. So there are two sets of discussions now. If we don't get any more money, we have to find a way to do the best protection of Lawrence Street under this existing budget, and that's not going to be the same as our original idea of what that project was going to look like. So now we're in that place. We don't know which one we're going to get, so we have to prepare for both at this time.
But the thing I look at is, as soon as something gets rushed, which everything seems to has to be done right quick, now we have another 18 months before you have to do the job. I think we should do a better job of looking things over before we start jumping to conclusions and say we got to get it out to tender right away.
Well, I don't disagree with you. We got to go to a different route. Let's be a lot clearer that we can afford that budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I've got a question in a way. On September the 4th, last week, you had an information meeting and we weren't allowed to speak at it. But when the speaker got through and he was leaving and Mr. Burke told him he could leave and made a signal with his hand, he went outside the council chambers. Mr. Best and I went out to talk to him, a friendly conversation, clarifying some of the things he had said. Mr. Burke comes out and tells us we can't talk to him unless we pay for it. What good is the meeting? This fellow, he came through the door after we were out there talking and very rudely interrupted our conversation. I can understand. Well, we deserve an apology, Mr. Best and I both. That was a private conversation. He had no business coming out and getting into it. He's very rude and ignorant and telling us that and he's an employee of the taxpayers. Who is he protecting? Why didn't he want us to talk to this man?
Well, that's an incident that shows one of the reasons we hold our meetings in public is that we've had discussion group rules since we came in. And the discussion group rules are that we get informed as a council by our contractors, by our staff at that time, and we share that in an open forum and we post it onto the website of the auto file. There is no questions for those meetings. It is not a public information system. It is the council information system which the public is invited to hear. So we try to be as transparent as we can in hearing all of that information, and that's been a long-standing policy. So let me finish. let me finish. You've asked a multiple set of questions. I'd like to try to answer them all. So number one is, it wasn't a public session. It was a council session that was open to you to hear. We achieved that, I think. The second question is, who does a contractor work for, and how much responsibility does the contractor have to individuals contacting them about the topic on which they've been engaged? We could not afford the contract for all of those people to suggest that they have a right to the time of the contractor at any time to talk to them and to ask them questions. We create in our process, and we create in the contract, times in which the public have public sessions in which those questions can be asked. But we could not, we have 5,500 people in this town. If they all said, I have the right to talk to that contractor and they have the right to bill you, well, we'd have to double or triple the contract costs. So the question really is, you elect council to represent you. Council makes public decisions on contracts. We enter a contract that specifically says what their duties are, and their duties are to inform council and to go to the public at specific steps in the process when they have information that we think the public needs to get to know. There's a lot of stuff that takes place, as you well know, early on that involves legal questions, land questions, etc., that are not going to be dealt with in public. But when those get resolved, then those can be laid out by the contractor in a public forum. So we try to walk the line of financial, being able to stick to financial lines in contracts. We write their performances in contracts. We have a lot of people that want to talk to contractors that are under contract with us, but that would really throw off each of those budgets if everybody got the opportunity to talk to them whenever they wanted and have clarity whenever they wanted. That's council's job, to ask those questions, and then when it reaches a point where they're getting comfortable with that, it goes to the public sessions, where those sessions can then get that specific individual input.
Nothing said, we had a private conversation with this man, nothing said about payment of any kind. But this man, he was rude enough to walk out and break into a private conversation. You and I have had private conversations. How would you like it if somebody else walked up and said, you can't talk to him?
Well, I am a contractor and my business is consulting, and I know that it's, whenever I go to a client's place, I'm asked those questions. And I am always stuck in a situation where, well, my contract requires me to talk to the board of directors or to so-and-so. They're not allowed to bill any of their time for anything else. So they would have to have an off-the-record conversation with you that had nothing to do with the contract, and then where would you be at? They would probably bill us for that time because they're working in the community, giving out information about projects for which we have a contract for them.
This is a private conversation.
Well,
and it's something that some of these people should have informed this man with.
Well,
and
I agree.
I informed him with some of it. And
sorry?
He was quite happy to listen to me and to Mr. Best as well.
Yeah. We will work to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's.
I want an apology.
I'm not. We'll look into what the circumstances were. I believe Mr. Burke was doing what he said was his job, which was the contractor was not supposed to be providing information about the specific contract except to council last night at this meeting. Their role with the public is well defined in their contract.
I'm still waiting for the apology.
On what?
I think that...
Step back up to the microphone.
I'm still waiting for the apology, and I think he should apologize to both of us, because when that man was outside of this council chamber, he was told he could go. He wasn't working at the time. He got information that he should have had long ago.
Any other questions?
Brian Lane, just as an aside, semantics. I witnessed the thing. I didn't hear it, I witnessed it. It looked rude to me as well. So maybe there's some sensitivity training required. I don't know, dealing with the public. It looked rude, I didn't hear it though. So anyways, I have some questions on 3 areas. On July the 3rd, prior to your special council meeting, it would appear the council was meeting in camera. RCMP was here. I'm assuming it was with a police matter. I've searched the minutes, the agendas since then. I haven't seen anything where there's been a motion come forward to approve minutes for that meeting or a motion to go in camera. So perhaps I've missed it, but I haven't seen it. There was a motion to approve the minutes for the special meeting of July the 3rd, but there's never been any mention of an in-camera meeting for July 3rd.
Is that the RCMP briefing? Yeah. Yeah. We have a standing RCMP briefing, which is to give us updates on what's going on in policing, what the issues are, and what some of the concerns may be.
So council is meeting, now as I understand municipal governance, if council is meeting and it's not in camera, the public is allowed to attend any meeting of council plus committee meetings, right? No? The assistant clerk was there, I understood.
Oh.
So is there, I've got a misunderstanding here on that?
It is not a declared meeting of council unless the town clerk is there. This was a briefing from the sergeant about particular activities in the policing sector over the last month, just to keep us up to date so we understand what's going on.
So why would that be different from, say, an in-camera meeting where you talk about police matters as well?
Because usually they have a resolution for a particular action. Okay. It's not an information session.
So this is a separate type of meeting that isn't mentioned in the governance bylaw then? Just a briefing, okay.
If you're making decisions, legal decisions or about policing, you have to have an in-camera meeting of council. If you're getting a discussion just for updates, that's an update briefing session that isn't a council meeting.
A bit odd, but okay. The water reading, this was at the special meeting, the information meeting, the water replacement of water meters, the readers, the what have you. Were there any other suppliers for this, or was it just, does this come under the authority limits for the town or the manager to go ahead and procure? Like, I know it's coming a motion tonight to buy, but was there anything else other bidders or requests for proposals to know? It seems like a good price, but did we talk to anyone else?
Mr. Beal, could you?
Yeah, the original equipment was bought 12 years ago. We began installing the radio read devices about 15, 16 years ago. So if we chose a different supplier at this point in time, we would have to change out all radio read devices, 2,000 radio read devices. That would be an extraordinary cost. That's why we went with Census Scotiatech. And their upgrade to the device. The equipment that we have today is still going to be used to read all existing radio read devices that are in play. It is an add-on to the equipment that we have today, not a completely new equipment.
Okay, but do we know if there's any other suppliers that would supply similar things at different prices, or we've dealt with these people for 20 years and we're going to keep on dealing with them?
There'll be a motion tonight on that topic, at which they'll get more information that council will be discussing at that point. I don't want to bias that discussion in a few minutes.
Okay. Is it normal for the treasurer to be involved in this and not the public works manager?
In our case, yes.
Okay, so the public works wouldn't have. Okay. The third area I want to talk about is the park, the $6,700 budget that was approved. I guess it was in January for upgrading the playground equipment at Lilas Fawcett Park. So council approved the $6,700 in January, which would, to me, would give direction to the Parks and Rec people to proceed with this project. So at the last information, I guess it's going to be the same thing. You're going to talk about this motion tonight, and you don't want to get into the debate. But how in the world did we get to a point in time in September where this $6,700 project was not acted on? We're at the end of the summer. We haven't upgraded the playground equipment. No work was done on the project that was approved. And now it's morphed into a $90,000 project without seeing, do we need to do something somewhere else in town? Or I know the argument is going to be, well, we've got this money given to us, and if we don't take it, someone else will take it. But, you know, at some point, you got to start saying no to free money, because there's no free money.
So your question is what?
How did, okay, in January, $6,700 was approved to upgrade the equipment. One would presumably think that was a direction to Parks and Rec to go out and do this. It was a sensible thing in a year where we...
So your question is,
why didn't he do the project? And
all right. So
how
we'll
did
be
he
sure
get
that
direction to go to a $90,000 project and not talk about the rest of the town?
So we'll be sure that question is answered in the motion and discussion tonight then.
Mayor and Council, Wendy Alder. I have two questions tonight. The first one is, in the spring of this year, we did a $25,000 study on exit 506, and Acoustics came back with some recommendations on crosswalks, sidewalks, improvements, infrastructure, blah, 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 so on and so forth. I'm looking in the package tonight, and I see the 5-year plan for roads for the town of Sackville, and exit 506 is addressed in 2023. So I'm just wondering if there's any, and I believe this all rolls into the budget process, so you know, maybe you can stop me, but I'm wondering if there's any, if any consideration could be put to reprioritize this, given that we've already spent $25,000 on a study, and I think there was some good actions out of it. Could we not do that sooner than 5 years down the road?
I think you're going to hear that debate. And indeed, when it was presented, the staff said, you need to make some decision if you want to change this, and very quickly. And so we've indicated there'll be some debate tonight, and there'll also be debate in the budget process about that, because I think many people are thinking similar to you that that's some time off.
Okay. The other question I have is nothing to do with roads. But last week I was out for a walk on my lunch hour, and there was a golf cart driving down the sidewalk. I see golf carts every day going up King Street on the sidewalk. And I'm wondering, is there a bylaw against that? Is it an RCMP issue? And I also see there's a green gator that Mount A owns, and this is a Mount A golf cart as well. There's a green gator that Mount A owns that drives up the road, and again, I see it almost every morning at 8:30, either following me up Salem or behind me, or in front of me, one way or the other. And I'm wondering, it's not licensed for the road. There's no safety, there's no license plate on it. I'm wondering about insurance, and if somebody does, God forbid, someday hit that thing, and the two girls that are driving it, I don't know if there's seatbelts in it or not, there may not be. There's no helmets. To me, it's an off-road vehicle. Again, is that a town thing, or is that an RCMP? And I'm wondering why nobody, if I'm the only one in this town that notices it and says anything about it.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We will look into whose jurisdiction that is. Those of you have asked some valid questions. So we'll make a note for somebody to call you back with what we've discovered and where we're going to go with this. Okay.
If I need to contact the RCMP, I will, but I think I think given, you know, Mayor and Council are aware of it, I think that, you know, maybe it's a call you need to make to the RCMP to anyways, I'll wait for your reply.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you for your questions. We'll move to number 4, disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest on the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll move to the minutes. So special meeting closed in camera, page 3. You've had these for some time, folks. Looking for, moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Meeting of August 13th.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Butcher. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Meeting of September 4th. Moved by Councillor Evans.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Tower. I kept losing him on the edge of my sight there. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And of closed in-camera meeting of September 4th. Deputy Mayor Aiken, Councillor Butcher, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. I have no business arising from the minutes unless anyone else has any. We move to Southeast Regional Services. I will start with the board's meeting. As a member of the board, we held the meeting on August 28th. Just a couple of things to note. It was an important one in that the budget for next year for the Southeast Regional Service Commission was discussed in detail. We've circulated much of that material to you. A couple of the highlights to note are, one, that the amount that Sackville will be providing is down by 3.2%. Not a whole lot, but $4,300 and some change. There's a couple of reasons for that. Mostly it's that they are cutting their operating portions down, but they are investing in capital, which shows up in the details that you have there. For example, one that was really important to us was last year we raised and fought for regional tourism to have half the budget that they were asking for, which ended up to be what was going to be the operating for 1 year, with the idea that it would move to 2 when they had things set up. Well, now they want to stay at the half, and it appears that that's what they're looking at as the future budget as well. So it's quite a difference from the original thought, but that's a significant change for us, which would be a lot of that amount that of the reduction for us. A couple of the ones that were most important were probably in capital. One was that the recycling fee is actually going down for residential units slightly by about $3 per unit, but the recycling fee for recycled garbage is still $75 a ton, but the tipping fee for unrecycled is now $110 per ton. And you'll recall that the practice was for those who simply brought garbage and threw it into the landfill, that they would gradually be upped to give them a financial incentive to start sorting and move over to the other category. The difficulty we ran into was, of course, the individual that wanted to buy that at a better price and export it and put it in a landfill somewhere else. But that now appears to be taken care of, at least we are assured it has been. And so we're back to this financial strategy to entice people to recycle from non-recycled so far.
What was the number again? Was it 75 and 100?
75, and for non-recycled, $109 per ton.
Good.
Recycled revenue for the commission is falling by over $500,000, and that is due to China setting up barriers to recycled materials, which you may have heard about in the mainstream media. It does have an effect on this side of the world, and it's going to be nearly $600,000 reduction in revenue for recycled components that come from them. So they're now looking for other places to sell those components. The world comes home to rest many times. Last year, there were 40,000 tons of carbon dioxide, which were removed by the use of the generator that has been built and has started action at the landfill, and using that to drive electricity to use within the waste facility itself. So that's good news in terms of that. And also that's been so successful, they're now looking at maybe moving up the building of the second generator soon. And if that requires some debt management, they wanted us to know that their debt borrowing ratio is at 12%, which is reasonable. If they wish to go any higher to borrow for a generator, they could easily do that. And one last thing was just to note that September 15th is the Rebecca Schofield Day for people to undertake acts of kindness, as she so well led in her short life. And the mayor of Riverview, where Ms. Schofield lived, wants us all to participate in any way we can on that day about random acts of kindness for others. So, any questions on our meeting? A lot of detail in that package. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Richard. Just a quick one. You tell us how much has been burnt off creating electricity. Did they have a dollar value of how much electricity they're actually generating that would save them on their budget line?
They are still theoretically in debt because they have to follow public sector guidelines for accounting versus if you were a business generating electricity, they would be making profits right now. But under the public sector, they are still in deficit. So they point those out to us every month of if we were operating this way, we would be having revenue coming in on the books, but we're over here and we're still required to address capital. So there's two answers to that. It will be next year free of the public sector accounting guideline issues and will start to show up on the books as if it's revenue for the commission.
Very good. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill, sorry.
Thank you. I was just wondering, Your Worship, you mentioned that we weren't going to be able to ship items overseas. What is it that we've been shipping?
As I understand the global motions of recycled goods is that we do the recycling, we do the basic movement of basic materials and make them into products that are kind of like the raw materials that then would go to another place for production into a reusable form, whether it's clothing or bottles or whatever. So that's what we sell to China from the Regional Service Commission, and China has put up barriers. They've got a lot of recycling of their own that they're now starting to use. So it's getting more difficult to sell.
No, I asked that because I didn't really know that it was sort of a half-finished product like that we were shipping out, and I guess I thought maybe there was something that they in fact could look at doing on site.
It's probably got some financial incentives for some spin-off businesses now, that's for sure. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor, was there anything you wanted to add of that meeting? Yeah. Good. Okay, that's my report. I'll turn it over to Ms. Pickford for planning, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the month of August, staff issued 9 building and development permits for the town of Sackville. This brought our total number up to 44 permits with a total construction value of $21.5 million. In that month of August, there was a lot of smaller projects, so not the large-scale institutional and commercial ones that you've seen in previous months, but more single-family accessory buildings, those kind of activities, but still a significant amount of money that contributed to the construction value. This time, compared to last year, we had 28 permits at a value of $11 million. So again, last year was primarily the difference is that we didn't have the large-scale commercial or institutional projects that we have this year. In the month of August, the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee did not have any development requests that required their review or approval, so there was none that were received. A number of other projects that I've been working on is the staff have been dealing with a number of development requests, finishing up some of the projects, building permits, large-scale projects that take a bit longer than just your average developments. And the other thing that we've started to do in-house is look at doing a review of the subdivision bylaw as well as the building bylaw for the town. Just kind of taking a quick scan through to see if where they're at as far as whether they need to be updated or what areas should be looked at or directed to the policy committee for review. So if there's any,
Questions on the planning report? Anyone? Anyone on bylaw wish to speak to the topic? No? Okay, you're off easy. So we'll move on to number 8. Number 8 is a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas Sackville's two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, asexual, plus, which is shorthand of 2SLGBTQA plus community is a vibrant and proud group within the Sackville community at large. And whereas the quadrumvirate that collaborates to make Sackville a positive, safe town for 2SLGBTQA plus persons, the town of Sackville, Mount Allison Students Union, the Mount Allison University Catalyst Group, and the Mount Allison University's Get Real Group, and whereas the 2SLGBTQA plus community aims to establish positive educational forums to raise awareness and celebrate the diversity of our citizens, and whereas the 2SLGBTQA plus community recognizes a gay-straight alliance is imperative to the well-being of both societies, and whereas the 2SLGBTQA plus community encourages dialogue as a tool towards a tolerant and accepting society in the Sackville area, therefore I, John Hyam, Mayor of the town of Sackville, hereby proclaim October 9th to 16th, 2017, Pride Week in Sackville, recognizing that everyone has the right to live in conditions of dignity, respect, and peace, regardless of sexual orientation and gender diversity. Thank you. We move to reports. A is the mayor's report. Councillors, you all have a summary in front of you that was left on your desk. A few items on media, CBC, a couple of interviews with CBC, and the Halifax Star contacted me upon seeking cross-Canada comments from mayors on the situation of the Toronto City Council being reduced by the new incoming provincial government. Ended up, we did make the cut. We were the smallest town by far on their survey, and most of which voiced something that you may have heard this afternoon. The court has put a halt to that decision at this point in time. So it was an interesting group to be moved in with, but it was a very short question, or 2 or 3 questions that were the same asked across the country, and then they gave a little profile of the community from which they were calling. Most of the other smallest one, I think, was about 25,000 people, so we were at a different level. I don't know why we got on that list, but we did.
We punch above our weight.
Pardon me?
We punch above our weight.
There you go. Some of the events, the Memorial Cup with Ethan Crossman, I attended that. Some of you else were about there. Kids really loved that. That was really well done. Attended the Tantramar Seniors College 10th anniversary the other day. Again, a couple of councillors dropped in. A terrific asset to this town and an amazing history, and the personal stories that were shared about individuals who had come here, individuals who had come out of their shell, individuals who had found some things that had been bothering them through their participation in some of the topics that the Seniors College has done was really, really quite remarkable. So we look forward to the Seniors College continuing to expand and become such a catalyst for us. I did attend the Drew for their annual Blueberry event outside. It was a lovely day, and a couple of graduates from Open Sky provided for some entertainment, and all had a good time and tried some local blueberries. We hosted here the RCMP Municipal Contract Holders meeting in this room at our request last year so that we could talk about our relationship and the manner in which we share information, as was requested here tonight about some explanation. No one else has that sort of a relationship, and they were all quite taken aback compared to the quality of service they had. They were also very interested, and we arranged for our community program officer to discuss what it's like to have a community-focused individual in that area, as opposed to hoping you get contact from another regional group at some point. And that raised lots of questions for them as well in terms of some of the services they were getting compared to us and the manner in which we were getting accountability from the force. So it's a good night for us to be able to discuss that. Also add that we did the third annual raising of the banners, sponsored by the Legion for veterans of the regional area. The largest amount as yet. It was actually held this time in the lounge at the rink, and it was quite effective. It was a little bit better in terms of space for presenting the banners than the Legion had been, but the atmosphere was very good, and for many very emotional, and it was one of those intriguing pieces. There's someone who came up from Kentville after and spoke to me and said, this is an amazing piece of community development that's going on here, and he could only think of one other town that he was aware of, and Garth Swicker, who was the MC, noted that when they can get impressed for this because of this, how successful it's been here, and that he is now getting requests from other small towns, not from other small towns, from veterans in other small towns or families of veterans that simply want to get banners like that in their community, and they're asking for us to produce them, us being Garth and the town here, and send them off to them. So 6 are in a small community in Cape Breton as a result of that relationship this summer as well. Also, some of you may have just attended the Via Rail Station, which was an open house this afternoon. I don't know if you did. I managed to get down there for a while. It seems like we had quite a few people. I think others will speak about that. A few things with the Mount Allison over the last month. I was invited to the first Acadian flag raising by the new president on campus. I've made several preliminary contracts with the new student union. We haven't had a formal meeting as yet. That continues to roll. The new Mount A president I've met at least twice at his request in the last 5 or 6 weeks, and we'll be meeting them in a session in a little while. The Rotary Corn Boil, which most of you were at, once again a success with all of the students and welcoming them to the town. I did meet with Sandy McIver of the Joyce Business Center, and following up within about 2 weeks, he brought in Rory Francis of Bio Alliance in PEI for a special meeting here to discuss the way in which they've had some success in Charlottetown of nurturing sectoral entrepreneurs, and in their particular field, that's not an area we'll compete with them, but the process and how they did it and what the assets were that they created a variety of new businesses over the last 10 or 15 years through this, as Sandy put it, but Rory didn't necessarily agree with it, competitive collaboration, where you collaborate and get things off the ground and then you compete. But they've been very interesting meetings. I do note, I think I might have noticed this before, that unlike when we used to write things by letter and you had to write letters and you had to address envelopes, I get a variety of emails now intended for the non-existent mayor of Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. So we're getting complaints over the lack of pedestrian benches in certain areas of town, and safety on for motorcycles, and an invitation to a provincial opening of a new facility. So I just found that I have redirected them to the appropriate people, and in case of some of the residents, described that what their governance structure is like and who their councillor is. They don't have a mayor of Sackville, they have a councillor for that area. So you may get some as well, so just bear that in mind, and yes, send them on. The housing co-op has traditionally had a different relationship, or had a specially defined relationship on garbage pickup, And when they read about the new garbage contract, they simply stopped me, literally stopped me in the streets and said, "Are we having the same relationship?" And I said, "Yes, it's our understanding that there are no terms changed in the garbage contract which would cover you." So they, I have not relayed that informally to them, but with your nodding acquaintance, I will do that now, so they can stop worrying about that. We've had multiple talks on infrastructure funding as noted with Mr. Carter's question earlier. Lots of questions on that. We also have a variety of other things bubbling. One is the 506 and how it might be funded with some of the infrastructure funds. We've had some questions on social infrastructure. There are lots of possibilities out there, and staff are now coming up with some of the priorities that we'll be talking about soon, over which ones should we try to proceed in the short term, and how does it help in our budgeting process and our plans, et cetera. And by the way, just the latest contact was this afternoon. I got an email from one of from the MP's office on some of the questions, so it continues to evolve on a daily basis. Harper Road usage, it's used for farm equipment, and it gets beaten up by road traffic. And so there was some discussion over the maintenance of that in terms of making sure that the farm equipment doesn't get rattled by all of the potholes being dug. And Mr. Acton, I think, has offered a satisfactory step at this point to try to limit that. So thank you, Mr. Acton, on that. We've all, I believe, had multiple parking inquiries since the last little while about what some of the implications are, what some of the signs have said differently, et cetera. So I'm sure you've had that as well. I've followed up with Camtran and also with Community Machinery, just seeing where they're at and if there's anything more that we could do, whether there's expansion. I can't tell you what the answers were because it's business information, but they're very pleased with follow-ups, and I believe our staff have also followed up separately, so they were actually quite impressed that we're trying to continue to follow through on that. I don't know if you guys have had it, but I had a Phoenix Pay system complaint to me, so it has nothing to do with us, but they're so frustrated they'll ask anybody to try to help, so I don't know if you guys have had that as well. We did pass it on to the MP's office, by the way, and they're working on that now. Lots of things going on in education reform. I think I spoke with many of you about experiential learning classroom attempt at Salem, and they have only a small amount of money that they were able to carve from their budgets. We tried from a variety of places to get them some larger money. It was really late in summer when this came up, but the idea was to change both the French immersion and English classes to experiential learning environment, so the furniture and all of the learning apparatus would be based upon the tenets of experiential learning. Unfortunately, we didn't get all that money in that short period of time, so there's a limited pilot now underway. The good news is everybody we talked to said, "Oh, that's the right thing to do. Yeah, this is exactly what you have to do," but we don't have any money. So Our Peace Alliance, there is a group of professors at Mount Allison who have pulled together to try to look at some of the pedagogical challenges attached to education reform. What is experiential learning? What role does infrastructure play? What are the topics, and how do you measure outcomes? And they're very interested in doing some research on these topics, and they had a meeting just the other day. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because we were here with the PEI fellow, but apparently over 50 people showed up to talk about the topics, so that's a positive as well. Finally, some movement in that education reform about the role of vocational studies and building vocational skills as part of education. Many people, including myself, feel vocational has been pushed off in the education system, and you end up trying to catch up later on, and they're not really seen as part of the team that works on all the outcomes when you work your way through the school system. They're just kind of off to the side somewhere. And there is a real interest and in vocational being part of education right from the start. Salem School is looking to create a maker place, a place where you experiment with all types of things, including gears and other elements of vocational, so that they start to get comfortable with their skills and people get to respect those skills earlier on. And right to the point where we now have the head of apprenticeships from New Brunswick Community College is now on the education reform group and pushing for equal presentation in all of these elements of reform with a vocational item. So all this is good in terms of the potential for businesses that will rely on education and information, which is where all the trends seem to be going. We have to get ahead of that trend, and we have to be able to turn it into constructive assets for the community at some point soon. I did meet with Carl Ward when we discussed several of these things. Carl is considering retiring in the next couple of years, wants to come back here and wants to do something for the community, so we've just kept our communications open on that, and I give him some updates on some of the things that he is of interest in. And as you know, we have a couple of resolutions at UMNB, and I did some further research on the question of railway land tenures and sent it over to UMNB to try to further explain why it's so confusing. And it is confusing. There is no clear tenure for railway lands. They appear to be federally owned with limited federal responsibility, with a right-of-way and operating agreements on top, and no one can get their hands on all of these parcels so far to explain, well, who's responsible when the culverts are causing flooding in nearby governments, which is what our question is. So the good news is that we have it up. Margot is now working on it and is working from the stuff that I sent her. So as long as it gets passed in the AGM, we should be able to look forward to some clarity, at least, if not resolution. Anything you'd like to add on this last month? Yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. Just before I represented the town at 2 events at Mount Allison last month. First was a reception for foreign students, where I had a chance to welcome them to Sackville. And this year there were 80 new foreign students from, I believe it was 30 different countries. And they're a fairly befuddled looking group. Most of them just arrived in the country fairly recently, so they're really back on their heels a bit, but they were fun to talk to. I also represented the town at the university commencement for first-year students. It's just a ceremony to sort of welcome and get them into the sort of Mount A way of doing things, and mercifully shorter than the graduation ceremonies. Again, as did the mayor, I had a chance to speak to the new president of Mount Allison on about town university cooperation, and he seems quite keen on it, going both ways. So it was encouraging. And finally, just to make everyone feel old, the starting class at Mount A this year was born in this century.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few comments. One of the ones about the multiple parking inquiries. I had a number of people comment on the vigilance with which traffic bylaws were enforced, and my standard response was always, was the law applied properly? Were you in fact parking longer than 2 hours or in a new parking zone? And the answer was always yes. So that if somebody thinks that the parking bylaws are wrong, they should suggest that we change them. But given that they do say what they say, I don't see a problem with them being enforced. So that was just sort of a comment on that. I think it's being done more rigorously perhaps than in the past. I don't know that for a fact, but that seems to be, based on the comments, that's the case. But I'm thinking, if you're enforcing the laws, I don't see a problem. I think you missed an opportunity with the Legion banners to not say that the ceremony was held at the Tantramar Veterans Civic Center, entirely appropriate place to do it, right? And just further to the RCMP talks, a lot of communities envy the service that we get from the RCMP, but also especially our community program officer. We pay for that. That costs money. We are choosing to spend taxpayers' money to do that, and we're getting good service. Other people envy us for that. We are paying for it. In the same way, we pay for wonderful equipment for our fire department, and we pay for the best snow removal in the world. These are all good services. I'm happy to support them, but it does cost money, and those are choices that we make. So I think it's worth pointing that out. These are optional. It doesn't have to be this way. We have a different contract with the RCMP than most other small municipalities. They share resources for a whole region, and they have one community program officer for the whole of our region, whereas we have one for our community because we pay for it. So.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, hearing none, we'll move to CAO report, please.
Thank you, Worship. Report's contained in the package. I think it's page 17. But I guess I was asked, I'm going to deviate a little bit. Someone asked me to comment about, at the start of the meeting, around the number of new housing that's going up and the number of permits and everything. And it's been a very busy year on the planning side. And I think that's a very positive sign for Sackville. And I just want to take this opportunity to recognize that whatever it is Sackville's doing, it must be positive. And it's certainly helping to attract a number of people to come to our community, and that's good. And I want to just congratulate Planning for starters for the efforts that they're doing and working with the people that are knocking on the door and trying to further development in our community. And so an awful lot of what's been said in the mayor's report and things. I congratulate our staff and our management team in working with the various people that come and knocking on our door, because a lot of times that doesn't happen on its own, and I think our staff do an awful lot of work behind the scenes, and quite often it goes unnoticed, and because I think once we're typically, and I'll say that as someone that's been had almost 40 years of working in public service, you don't do it for the accolades and the thanks, and you do it because you're wired that way for some reason, that you want to contribute and make a difference in your community. And I think we've got a very good management team and a staff that works very hard in delivering that to their citizens. And I look at the fire department that goes out to the various calls. Their calls are up every bit as high as any other year. A lot of extras that go into the department. The mayor's already made the comment about, you know, our fire department being second to none, and I think most would agree with that. And but yet it's the effort of the community and the volunteers in the community that put some fundraising together to try and bring in money to our community to help support providing that service. And I think that's kudos to the chief and his deputies and the team within the department. And so congratulations to them. I know in the admin side of things, in working in the clerk's office, we've different legislation coming and going every day now, which is all good because we didn't have legislation before. It wasn't to the degree that it needed to be and should be. And yet the clerk's office is busy trying to manage to make sure that we are on top of things and doing things the way they should, and our minutes are recorded each and every time special meetings or regular meetings are held, and they're there. I know we worked hard to get the information out to the community in terms of websites and packages, etc. You know, again, just a good job on the clerk side of things of trying to make sure that the information is out to the community. Financially, I think we all know that we've been in pretty good stead over the years in terms of our finances, and I know the treasurer and the management team work extremely hard at bringing in and trying to bring in more money to our community in terms of whether it's capital dollars or program money, etc. And we've recognized it in the past, but it's enabled us to achieve a whole lot more than we would on the taxpayers' dollar all the time. And when you can get 75 cents to complete a project in your community, really nice. And we've had some where we've got 100% dollars. So I congratulate the staff on working hard to reach out and further the opportunities that can happen in our community. And I think we've got good signs of seeing that, whether it be Bill Johnson Park, and I can only speak in my time, but Bridge Street in terms of the projects we've achieved. And, you know, Bill Johnson Park, the Lawrence Street, and the infrastructure that's been done and handled in our community. Further, and we continue to pick away at places like, you know, Beach Hill Park. And so I think, you know, people talk to us and wonder and tell us why they like what it is they like about Sackville, and there's a good feel to Sackville. And I think that's important. And, you know, we talk about collaboration, and obviously, you know, I come from PEI, so I happen to know the individual that come over, and I don't need to hear the story of how important collaboration is from this gentleman, but he's made it work in his community, especially in the Bio Alliance area, and I think that we can, you know, take a page from that book and work on it and further it in our own community, and I think we've done well. And there was talk about, you know, collaboration to some of the things that have happened with other organizations in our community, and we do a lot of work in helping them achieve what it is they want to achieve. And I thank the staff and congratulate the staff for the effort that they contribute. By no means are they the only ones that contribute to it, and I'm not trying to suggest that, but I do think, and I recognize, I don't see anybody here tonight in the management side that works 8:30 to 4:30 and goes home. And I know we all have a phone in our belt that tends to almost make us 24/7 sometimes. So some days you'd like to leave the phone on your belt. On the infrastructure side, we've talked about it, and it's, you know, it's one pothole after another and a culvert after another, and more paving and more disruptions and more, you know, why not this and why not that, and you can never do enough. But snow removal, we got that one down. It seems to be everybody says thank you very much for the snow removal. But I congratulate the Public Works Department and the good job that they do, and whether it's garbage cans or managing projects or working with the contractors. And while we're doing that, we start to make ice because the seasons are changing and we're right into another year, and we're constantly got different pressures on, whether it be making ice, cleaning up trails, or paving streets. On the tourism side, you know, we look at the number of people that have come into our community this year. Maybe they're not up as much or as high as we'd like, but they're very stable, and people have good things to say about when they drop into Sackville. And I credit the tourism staff and the counselors that are at the department and the management for the marketing that they do to try and get the message out of selling Sackville. We're doing such a good job. We're also managing Lower Sackville, I hear, so that's good. And, you know, on the communication side, you know, I think we have done, you know, tremendous work in my time here that I've seen some of the strides that we've taken, and it's a credit to the staff that are, you know, not many of us knew much about social media, let alone computers and technology, but we've advanced and kept stride with a lot of, we're as good as any community when it comes to websites and social media, and that's, you know, that's because we've worked at it. And again, have you seen any tweets? Have you seen things in the weekends? Or do we just stop Monday to Friday and 4:30 we put the computer away? And street closures, etc. I mean, again, I thank the staff for being on deck, you know, almost 24/7. And on the recreation program side of things, I've never seen so many different recreation programs in all my life ever come up, whether it be pickleball or mudslide. And with all due respect to Councillor Aiken, I think, you know, if they're going to participate in recreation, in Matt's programs, those kids are going to get dirty. And because he's got more different activities going on all the time, and I kudos to him because, you know, he's got lots happening in this community, and the comment is there's almost too much going on. And on top of all that, we still work with the Rotary Club to make sure we get some 1,000 corns of cobs of corn ready for the corn boil on Saturday to welcome the students back, and thanks to the Rotary Club and the staff that helped do that. So with that, Your Worship, that's my report, and I'd be prepared to deflect any questions of what's going on in the departments to our managers, or allow them to come up during the presentation of those reports.
Well said.
Any questions on the CAO report? Thank you. I appreciate that, summary of what's going on. No other questions. We move to Finance and Administration. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Worship. I'll do part one of this. The bills and payrolls are on page 18 and 19. I can look at our treasurer, see if there's any comments he would like to make towards it, and then I will make a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tower, Your Worship. As far as the page 18, which is the accounts payable report for the month, the larger invoices in general relate to street paving and street patching. That makes up about 60% of the total bills that were paid out, as well as MB Power payments for electricity, garbage contract. In utility, the majority of that is the Veolia payment for our treatment plant as well as power. General capital projects included Main Street, the tent, Lawrence Street Phase 2, and utility capital projects included Main Street and meters. The payroll for page 19 is for 2 pay periods in the month, and the overtime reasons are noted at the bottom of the report.
Thank you, kind sir. I move that council accept the bills and payroll for the month of August 2018 as follows. General government, $522,427.67. General capital, $76,250.19. Utility government, $64,408.97. Utility capital, $25,724.89. And salaries, $245,013.86.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 2, Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. Report for the Finance Administration appears on page 20 of the package, and I'll just read a summary of that report here. Financial statements are included to the end of August 2018. We continue to be on target with all accounts, with repairs to the excavator and utility capital being the only unbudgeted item to date. The 2019 budget process is set to begin in the next month. The first public meeting for a public presentation and requests from groups and organizations will be held on October 22nd, 2018. Water and sewer bills had a due date of August 10th, 2018, and we're now in the process of sending out reminder notices to those who have not paid the bills, and these notices go out in early September. We continue to monitor water and sewer shutoff letters from September 2017 and July 2018. For the September 2017 letters, we have collected just over $63,000, which is a shade over 90% of the total. And we previously had disconnected 2 properties, which both appear to be vacant and remain disconnected. For the July 2018 letters, we have collected just over $71,000, or 79.3% of the total outstanding, and will continue to monitor the situation. Sorry, 73.9. The bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics are attached. The bylaw students continue to work until the end of the summer and will be completing the summer term and on-the-job training by the end of September. And we wish them the best in their future endeavors and careers and thank them for their service this summer. The vacant bylaw enforcement officer position had a closing date for applicants of August 24th, and there were a total of 82 applications received. We'll now review the applications with anticipation of filling the position by October. And finally, I have a motion tonight for the purchase of upgrades to the vehicle reading devices that allows us to read water meters through radio frequencies while driving by. The upgrade is a requirement because of technological changes and will be needed for us to read meters in the future. And the old devices were purchased 12 years ago. And that's my report. There were, if there's any questions, I'll direct them to the treasurer. And I have a motion.
Perhaps once you've read the motion, we can ask the treasurer about something around the question we heard earlier today. Thanks.
I move that council approve the upgrade to our water meter reading equipment, which includes a vehicle unit, VGB, handheld unit, Command Link Plus, 25 smart points, and 25 iPearl meters at a total price of $29,500 plus HST.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. I wish to ask Mr. Beal to speak to the question about a tender on this topic versus the approach.
Yeah, for sure. As indicated earlier, if we looked at replacing all of our radio devices in addition to the equipment, we would look at putting out a full tender. We're not at a position to change out all the reading devices that are currently attached and have been attached to the meters since 2006. That would be a cost in the range of $400,000 just to change that out. As far as the Procurement Act goes, there is an exemption in the Act which indicates that in order to ensure compatibility with existing goods, a procuring entity may restrict a solicitation for submissions to a specific product. So it is slightly over the $25,000 limit, which should require a tender, but because we are having to supply compatibility with our existing equipment, that provided us with the exemption needed within the Procurement Act to proceed with this upgrade to the device. Again, we will have all the existing equipment that we had to read the meters. It will just be one additional box that goes on top of the equipment when Public Works does go out and read the meters. Just to further that question, Finance and Public Works do work closely together. So Finance looks after the electronics, the computer, and parts of it. Public Works does take care of all the inventory, the installation, and does take the equipment out of the office when they do the reading on a quarterly basis. But Finance does input all the data into the computer in preparation for doing the meter readings.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Council have any questions on this? Councillor Tower?
Thank you, Your Worship. Mike, to follow up on that is because of the years of working with these people and buying their equipment over the long term that you were able to put pressure on and get this much better price for us?
Absolutely. I think I indicated at a previous meeting that there was an end-of-life date for the old reading devices, and I don't want to get into all the terminology, but there was an end-of-life. Unfortunately, we required some more radio read devices. We called to order them, and we're told they don't make them anymore. So that was kind of the end of life notice that we provided. So of course it allowed me to put pressure back on them. That we had when we did go out to a tender for these things, that we chose your company, and that we need something more than just a market price for this device. And he went, and through Scotiatech they went to the Canadian manager in charge and put together a package which was 41.7% off, lower than market value of what it would cost if we buy it at a future time.
Thank you very much.
Question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. I thank you for the clarification, Mr. Beal, on all three fronts. No further motions, Deputy Mayor, correct? Okay, we move to Tourism and Business Development. Deputy Mayor, you have this one as well, I believe?
No,
Oh, do I have that right? Sorry, Councillor O'Neill, sorry.
thank you. The tourism report can be found on page 29 and 30. Visitor parties, they call them parties, which couldn't be, I don't know what the number is in a party, 670, but I'd rather look at it when it says it represents 1,214 people visited the Tourist Bureau during the month of August. There were 4 waterfowl park tours, and on an average, our local businesses report that they just generally about the same amount of tourist traffic this year as was last. Discussions are in progress for the rental agreement for the craft gallery. and that current agreement runs out the end of December. We are reviewing our advertising in the Provincial Visitor Information Guide, and I will to purchase a half-page ad, and I'll be bringing a motion forward.
You're going to purchase it?
Yep. Management had the first meeting with the consultants completing the town's new business development strategy. Our Waterfall Park artist in residence, Andrea Wilson, finished her residency in the park with a well-attended artist talk on October the 30th. And our park attendant artist in residence, Logan Milne, also finished her residency with a workshop for youth and a talk on August the 27th. The fall VIC worker, Phyllis Stopps, began work on August the 31st, and we're pleased to welcome her back for another year. During July and August, professional photos were taken of the Waterfowl Park, our trails, the Trans-Canada Trail, Canada Day, Silver Lake, Folk Cinema, sculptures around town, and the Sackville Triathlon. And these will be used in future promotions and brochures. The department also successfully presented 2 one-act plays in St. Andrews and in Beach Hill Park on August the 16th and 17th. The Visitor Information Center and Craft Gallery are open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Sunday during the month of September, and we encourage local businesses to take advantage of our Business of the Week program, which allows a local business to showcase their products and services for free. So if you're interested in that, please call 364-4967. And if we have no questions on that report, I'll read my motion.
Just 1 second to see any questions on the report. Actually, Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, just that very last item. If it's open from Monday to Sunday, does that mean 7 days a week?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's open 7 days a week.
Okay, that's okay.
No other questions? You have a motion, Councillor?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. I move that Council approve the 2019 Provincial Visitor Guide half-page advertisement in the amount of $5,510 plus HST for the year 2019.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Tower. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Anything else on that?
No, Your Worship, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, we move to item E, public properties. Councillor Tower, is that you?
That is, Your Worship, thank you. The information is on pages 31 through 35. Public Works Department completed the King Street culvert replacement during the last week of August. The patching contractor is scheduled to come back into town this month, I believe. Yes, right. To complete several cross cuts due to utility services completed over the summer. And we hope to look around other areas for patching that they can do at the same time, budget permitting. Public Works Department have completed the installation of the sewer and water and main extension from Bridge Street to Robson Avenue during the month of August. Construction went well, and the staff will be working to complete the road service through the utility easement and clean up the job site over the next months as times and resources permit. The utility department worked on our water replacement meters program, which was mentioned in finance. Mechanics continue to do the maintenance on all the equipment to repair breakdowns of public works, parks, facilities, fire trucks, and rescue. The summer students continued to assist the public on different projects, as well as trim around fire hydrants, guardrails throughout the town during the month of August. They finished their term in late August, and we want to thank them all for their hard work throughout the summer and wish them the best in future endeavors. The engineering department continued to prepare for the tender number 2018-07 Main Street reconstruction project from Dufferin to Queens Road. The project was awarded to Bowser, and things seem to be moving along fairly smoothly there. The engineering department continued to work with Crandall Limited on the design of the Lawrence Street reconstruction and stormwater mitigation project. Due to all tenders coming in over the allocated budget for phase 2, the consultant have completed further evaluation of options available to meet the current budget, and these were presented to council last week. Crandall Engineering provided council and the public with a presentation on some of the issues that led to the original tender to come in over budget, as well as proposed plan for the short-term solution to phase 2 during a special council meeting, as I said last week. The engineering department completed a 5-year capital plan for designated highways during the month of August. The revised plan is attached for 2019 to 23 and was submitted to council last week at a special council meeting for our review and consideration. Motion will be coming through tonight, but I can warn council I'm going to make a slight change to it, if you guys will allow me to do such. Staff continue to keep in touch with DTI regarding the replacement of Carter's Brook Culvert Abido project on 935. DTI had several issues that have slowed down construction. However, they expect to have them resolved in the near future and are still expecting to complete the project this fall and winter. We will pass on further information as it becomes available. Tantramar Veteran Memorial Civic Center. Center hosted the roller derby practice on the arena floor on August 15th and 22nd. And I don't remember seeing any counselors out doing that, but maybe next time. The Civic Center hosted the wedding of Mr. and Mrs. Briley Wheaton in August. Congratulations to the happy couple, and may have the best future. Simcoe started the ice plant on September 4th, with the rental starting on September 10th. The new arena schedule software is on the town website, and the schedule is live, so it's always up to date as changes are made. Mount Allison varsity women's hockey team played their first exhibition game on September 23rd at will be doing on September 23rd, and so we encourage people to get out and support this team. They have a lot of energy. Staff would like to welcome back Mary Ann Oster as a canteen manager for the Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center. Drop by, say hello, and maybe have a snack or two. Parks and Facilities Department in the Municipal Park would like to thank their summer staff for a job well done. The Parks and Facility Department is pleased to announce the Regional Trails Commission will be topping up the trails between Weldon Street and the Trans-Canada that runs beside the Waterfowl Park, and assigned the work to a local contractor. The Parks facility will be testing water, as always, at Lilas Faucet until it's definitely closed for the year. The half pipe in the skate park has been installed, and thanks to local skaters, the other equipment have been moved to allow flow when using the skate park. The hours of the splash pad at Bill Johnson Memorial Park have been adjusted. It says 10 to 7, and I think at 7 o'clock it's getting quite chilly now, but these hours will be changed as the weather continues to drop. Staff are maintaining the parks as well as lining football fields, soccer, and baseball fields as time permits. As part of the 2018 capital budget process, Council approved funds to continue the upgrades to the Waterfowl Park. As part of these upgrades, we are looking to replace 2 bridges along the section of the trail near Waterfowl Lane and the Canadian Wildlife Services. The upgrades will be completed this fall by the Tantramar builder of Sackville. A motion will be coming here tonight. And the staff are waiting for the final paperwork on the Lund property, and will be ready to proceed with this project once all documents are complete. the potable water at Beach Hill Park is continually tested and until it is unhooked and for the season.
Any questions on the report? Councillor Tower, we tried to, I've had a second thought over our earlier discussion over process, and I'm going to ask the CAO to suggest a process because we're going to amend a motion that was in the package to another motion. So I'd like the CAO to please describe what we should follow.
Being a little bit in the dark, Your Worship, of what's intended, but if the intention is for a councillor to bring forward an amendment to an original motion, then I would suggest the original motion should be read, seconded, and put on the floor, at which point in time then you have discussion, at which point in time anyone can move an amendment to the original motion. If it's the desire of one or more councillors to abandon what was intended as the original motion, and you want to come with something that's completely different, then you can go forward with that new motion. There is no, and this is something that we always have some conflict with people wondering why we don't put motions out ahead of time. Quite frankly, you never know, and tonight could be an example of what the motion is until it's tabled. So I hope that's clear, Your Worship. If it's close to the original intent motion, I would suggest you go with that and then do an amendment. If it's something completely different, then you're probably best to move ahead with that new motion, obtain seconders, and then there's more to the process, but typically it's motions on the table, seconded, discussion, question, vote on it, as you know.
Okay, so Councillor Tower, I think, so the original motion that you have, we'll propose that in second, and then the debate. Deputy Mayor Reagan?
Thank you. My understanding of the rules is that the mover of a original mover can't propose an amendment. So someone else would have to amend it, or someone else would have to move it.
What if I put the motion forward and then you can speak on it?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Finney. Do you have the motion there?
I have.
Bruce will move it, you'll second it, then you can make your suggested amendment. So Councillor Finney, do you have it?
We're doing the 5-year capital plan one. Yeah. I move that council accept the 5-year capital plan for designated highways as presented within the public property report and authorize that it be submitted to the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Evans. Motion is on the floor. Councillor Tower, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to see an amendment to this 5-year report. I realize that it's done every year, passed on the government, and Dwayne did his usual great job of putting it forward, and as he took last year's, he moved everything forward 1 year, and knew that we were talking about the Cattail Ridge Bridge Street area, and so he put it on this list. I would like to see the amendment to this so that the first one on this list becomes the Cattail Ridge Bridge Street proposal, and then move the 106 down below the Main Street Queens Road one, so that we do Cattail Ridge this year for the pass on to the government. Next year, or the year after, we pass on that we want 106 Queens Road as number 2, and then we can go back and put the Route 106 Queens Road, 935 to Carter's Turn, next in line, and then we could
just talking about pushing them down.
Push them, although we always, because of the way Dwayne has done this, as putting pressure on the town every second year I want to maintain that same gap. So in the end, the basic difference is the 106 Queens Road Carter's Turn would drop to the bottom of this list. And so we would still maintain the cycle of an easy year and a heavier year. So,
So number 5 becomes number 1.
Correct.
Number 1 becomes number 5. Is that correct?
no, that would break up the cycle. So, and number 3 would become the new number 5.
Councillor Evans, can you?
I understand why Councillor Tarr wants to do this. That's our decision. I would like to know the implications from staff's perspective about, I don't want to start juggling it if the engineer has put it in order for a reason. So I would like to know what the implications are of us doing what Councillor Tarr wants to do.
Point of order, Your Worship.
Yes.
The amendment hasn't been seconded.
Correct.
So,
And if I can, Your Worship, 2 point of order. I'm not sure I'm clear on the order, and it might be helpful if we look at the list there as numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and if you want to move number 5 to number 1, amend it such that 5 becomes 1, 1 becomes 5, 2 becomes 3, 4, so that it's clear.
yeah, I agree. So Councillor Tower, could you try that again?
I will do indeed. Yeah.
Number 5,
Number 5 becomes number 1.
number 1 becomes,
By talking, number 1 becomes number 3. And then, and number 3 would become number 5. I will say that I did speak to Dwayne before I brought this forward.
5.
2 and 4?
Stay the same.
Yes.
2 is 2, 4 is 4.
Yeah, and that maintains that cycle which Dwayne thought out so well.
Okay, so you want to move that vote?
I'd like to make that as a motion, an amendment to the motion.
Okay, is that clear? So the motion has been moved. Seconded by Councillor Black. So that is open for debate now. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. I will support the amendment wholeheartedly. This hinges on economic development in the town, which I think is a very important aspect of it. And the road there, I think we all know, coming off Cattail Ridge is pretty bad shape. So I fully support this amendment.
Mr. Acton, did you want to give any context to this in terms of the implications?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. As far as the change goes, it can easily be done. Is there any major implications of this? Not really. It just means 106 takes a back seat for 2 years. So we'll continue to patch 106 as we always do, and things will just kind of get pushed along. And through the amendment you had, we kind of needed to take 1 down to 3 because if you see the sections that I had, they were written specific to that. So no major implications as far as I'm concerned. Things just kind of get pushed back a little bit as far as the resurfacing of 106.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Black, please.
I said it at the special council meeting that I thought this would be a good idea to move it around. So I wholeheartedly agree that it should be shuffled. My hope is that if we get some curb and gutter and some nice sidewalks in there, that it'll sort of entice people to want to develop that area, which it desperately needs.
So we're debating the amendment. Any other questions on or comments on the amendment? CAO, please.
Your Worship, as I understand the amendment, it's almost a full motion where it's the original motion be amended such that the project order is listed as, and you've just, the same motion is in place in terms of following up with the province and et cetera, it's just your order of projects has changed. So I think in the end, when you finish discussion, call for the question, this vote will, if passed, will complete the full motion that's required on this.
I think the we would move on amending it, and if that passes, then we vote on the amended motion. I think that's right, and it doesn't matter.
I guess I've just offered my advice as CAO, so everybody else can jump in and offer theirs.
I'm still not clear. So we're going to vote on the amended motion. And then is that not the final motion, or?
Your Worship, I think the amendment is really encompassing to suggest that the original motion be amended such that the project order is.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Right.
And once you vote on that, I don't think you need to go back to any original motion. You'd just be repeating the same thing. I think this amendment encompasses dealing with the original motion.
Okay, so that's what you've moved, Councillor Town. And seconded by Councillor Black. So, everybody clear on the question? Question?
Question.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried and finalized. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tower. I believe you have another motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council approve the replacement of 2 existing bridges as part of the Waterfowl Park trail system improvements to Tantamar Builders Limited in the amount of $27,760 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Tower. Seconded by Councillor Evans.
Could we have Dwayne give the background on who?
Mr. Acton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Tower. Yeah, as part of the capital budget process, as you're aware, Council did approve funds to continue with the improvement of the Waterfowl Park. And as I mentioned last week, we did all the boardwalk, but some of the trails closer to CWS, Waterfowl Lane, there's trails over there that we've been starting and working away at improving those. And there's wood sections every so often to get over top of some wet areas. And it is our intention to replace 2 of those wood sections, so 2, we're calling them bridges. 2 of those bridges under this contract to a local contractor who has done this type of work for us before, following all the specifications, utilizing the helical coil similar to all our others, and finishing up at least 2 of those wood bridges as part of this improvements. And that would be done this fall.
Councillor Butcher, please.
I'm fairly sure that the company is not called Tantramar Builders. I think they're called Tantramar Building and Renovations. And the reason I'm fairly sure of that is my father's company was Tantramar Builders that has not been in existence since 1974. So perhaps we should make the motion for Tantramar Buildings and Renovations instead.
Do we need to move an amendment?
No, it's called a friendly amendment. It's just a matter of changing.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Councillor Butcher. Anything else on? No? Councillor Evans, please.
Good point. I'm doubtful about my comment. When we did the boardwalk renovations, we did it in a phased approach. And after the first phase was completed, I was so impressed with the quality of work. And then we went to tender, and a different company got the second tender, and I was a little bit apprehensive. And they did a really good job too. This company did at least part of phase 2, right? Or the second part, yeah. So I'm really pleased to support this because I'm really pleased with the work that both of the companies have done in the past. So I'm going to be pleased with this. So I'm in support of this motion with the correct company.
Any other comments? Call for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. That is all. Thank you, Councillor Tower. We move to recreation programs and events. And Councillor.
I will do that, but I rotated my thing. There we go. Almost 3,000, we didn't meet, by the way, the liaison group did not meet in August, but I do have a report prepared by the manager. Almost 3,000 people took part in our 30 summer programs and events in 2018. Now, this is unfortunately accurate. I'd like to say 1,000, but apparently it was 960 cobs of corn were served to Mount Allison students and local residents during the annual corn boil on September 1st. Thank you to the Rotary Club of Sackville, the Mount Allison, I expect it's the student union. Rotaract Group. Why can't I move this over? Okay. And members of the town council for their help. Staff have continued to be successful in our application to acquire grant money to support the new natural playground at Lillis Fawcett Park, priced at $97,500. I'm still having technical difficulties. And a motion will follow authorizing the, actually requesting, I guess, formally, the $22,500 grant from the Regional Development Corporation. The RDC grant will cover up to 50% of all eligible costs up to the approved contribution, meaning we will be able to move forward on the project in phases if necessary while we wait for word about the Federal Enabling Accessibility Grant application. The Mount Allison Homecoming and Fall Fair will be taking place during the same weekend. Staff have been working with Mount Allison representatives to plan for the high volume of traffic expected. Fall Fair will take place September 20th, 23rd this year, and everybody's seen the banner. There have been a couple of changes to the schedule. The fireworks will be returning to Dufferin Street Sports Field at 9 o'clock on Friday, September 21st. We encourage residents to take in the show at Marshfield Middle School on the Hill. Additionally, Eddie Chase and the Graffiti Four will no longer be playing in the tent, but will be replaced by Patio Boys and the Beach Toys, not the Beach Boys, okay. For a full list of Fall Fair events, including the new parade route, please visit www.sackville.com/fallfair. And the library report says the library summer reading program had 128 members who together read 2,443 books during the summer, and 1,456 participants took part in their various programs and events throughout the summer. Pretty impressive. During September, the library is offering free passes to King's Landing for anyone with a New Brunswick library card. And that's the report.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Tower.
I'm just wondering, Your Worship, whether this be a good time for more information of how 6,700 or 7,000 turned into 97,000.
Mr. Pride, could you put context onto that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship and Councillor. Basically, the manager of Parks and Facilities, Todd, had a 5-year capital plan, and in that 5-year capital plan, he had about $7,000 to $10,000 a year to go towards picking away at the Lillis Fawcett Park playground. The playground equipment there isn't in the best of shape. Some of it's needed to be replaced pretty well immediately. So knowing that, we started to look at different options for expanding the project there. As we did our research, we came across the idea of a natural playground, which I explained last week. Also, we came across several funding opportunities to be able to expand the project and maybe, possibly, get it all done in 1 year rather than over a 5-year period. So rather than do the work in the spring, we started applying for these projects. Different applications for different funding have different deadlines. The application periods start at different times. So we started applying for these different funds, and we've been very successful. So up to this point, we have approximately $61,000 in cash and in kind once council approves this RDC grant, and I have confirmation from the Regional Development Corporation that we now have enough money in hand that we can start moving ahead with the project, and if we need to do it in phases, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Pride. So in summary to the question earlier, the opportunity was to simply continue to pick away at the $10,000 a year gradual replacement, and instead you found up to $97,000 total to replace it this fall with a different design as your group has suggested you wanted to pursue. And we now have that money to do that. So thank you for that context. Councillor Butcher, please.
I have a question that in regards to the library offering free passes to King's Landing. Would those passes be only to use in September, or would they be for any time and they're given out in September?
Mr. Pride, please.
That's a great question. I have no idea, but I can find out for you.
Any other questions or comments on that? I would note that if you added up the participants in the recreation program and the participants in the library program, you pretty well have a number that's larger than our population. So
some people did both.
Some may have. Okay, we have a motion. Councillor Evans?
I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the funding agreement with the Regional Development Corporation identified as project number 11239, Town of Sackville improvements for playground equipment and installation at Lillis Fawcett Park.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Black. Motion is open. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just trying to get the money straight in my head. You say it's a $97,000 project, and we have 64 committed right now? If that's the case, is the town on the hook for the rest of it?
Yeah, so far, between the cash that we have in our capital project, cash that we've been able to raise through various grants, and in-kind contributions that we can provide, like in doing some of the installation ourselves, providing equipment and whatnot, the value comes to about $61,000. So I have applied for another fund through the federal government, the Enabling Accessibility Fund. That would cover the remaining $38,000. Did I have that right? $1,000 to complete the project. If we weren't successful in getting that fund, then we could still phase in the project. So we'd have to remove one of the pieces of equipment that was in the original quote and scale it back. Sure.
Okay. Any other? CAO, please.
I guess, Your Worship, just to be clear, and then to be clear for myself, my understanding this was a phased project over a number of years. Recreation staff and others have reached out and obtained money from other sources, so they're able to get more done than was originally contemplated by our budget of $6,000 to $10,000 per year. So the intent will be is that we'll only spend based on the money that's available to us to spend. If we're short $10,000 or $20,000, then that will be done in a future year when money's either budgeted by the town or the funds are acquired from some other source. We're not going to overextend ourselves, spend $90,000 and only have $60,000 in funding.
Thank you for that. Good clarification. Call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
That's it for me.
Move to item G, public safety. Councillor O'Neill, is that you?
That's me, I guess, sir. The Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 11 calls for service in the month of August, which included 4 motor vehicle collisions, 2 residential fire alarms, 1 commercial fire alarm, 1 rubbish fire, and 1 grass fire, and also 1 request for assistance from the RCMP, and 1 mutual aid call for assistance from the Amherst Fire Department. The number of calls for service to date in 2018 remained down compared to the same time frame last year. Training sessions took place in the month of August, as well as a door-to-door smoke alarm education and awareness, which saw over 30 smoke alarms and several batteries passed out to our residents to assist them with their emergency preparedness planning. The chief would like to pass on his thanks to all the residents who helped support his sit-in up 75 feet high in the air as the boys worked to sell truck tickets, and they were really surprised and thankful for all those that supported them. That day that he set up way up in the ladder, they sold 137 tickets. So, in support of their annual truck draw. There'll be, I have 3 motions coming forward. The first one will be a motion to recommend the purchase of 11 self-contained breathing apparatus, as well as 27 4500 PSI carbon-wrapped cylinders and 2 spare scuba mat harness. These scuba upgrades fall within the allocated budget for this capital project. A fire safety presentation was given to Mount Allison University Dons and RAs on how to educate the students on the use of fire extinguishers, and probably not how to pull false alarms as well, Chief. Is that in there? The department invites all citizens and the surrounding citizens and their surrounding communities to come out and check their open house on Thursday, 6:30 on September the 20th. Just a reminder that their 13th annual truck draw tickets are out and about, and we encourage you to pick up your tickets and help support our firefighters. There's also a reminder that there are coupons on the reverse side of those tickets, which are helpful to whoever buys them. Also a reminder that rubbish fires are strictly prohibited within the town limits. And as always, the chief reminds the residents that we should have a basic emergency kit prepared to last 72 hours. And the 3 motions I have, oh, I'm sorry, you have a question here.
Oh, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I've already commented on the fire chief's willingness to do risky things in order to raise funds, but I have a question for him. Of the 137 tickets that were purchased while you were up there, how many were for up and how many were for down?
Thank you, Councillor Evans. That's a very good question. I'm not sure, but I know I moved up and down a lot throughout the day. So, yes.
Councillor Tarr?
Thank you, Worship. I'm kind of curious how many more tickets we have to sell on that truck to get it gone completely.
We certainly haven't reached our goal of 2,800 tickets yet to ensure that the truck does go as per our licensing permit. However, I'm confident with the ticket sales in the next few days, we'll certainly reach our goal.
You're not considering another stunt with...
I certainly would if I needed to.
Well, there's a lot of rain coming tomorrow.
That's okay.
Okay. Councillor Evans, you have some... okay. Councillor O'Neill, you have motions with the fire.
I just wondered if maybe he'd sell more tickets if we put our mayor up there. What do you think?
Doesn't sound like it.
No, we want him to come down.
No. Okay.
O'Neill, you have motions with the fire, then we'll finish with the police services.
Yes, I have 3 motions for the fire. I move that council award tender number 2018-14 for the supply of 11 self-contained breathing apparatus, scuba, 27 4,500 PSI carbon-wrapped cylinders, and 2 spare harnesses for scuba to the lowest bidder, Micmac Fire and Safety Source, Fredericton, New Brunswick, in the amount of $128,955.28, HST included.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Finney. Councillor Evans?
This is a major purchase. I would just like someone to confirm that this is something that we do on an annual basis. It was budgeted. It's not a surprise to us. This is a normal thing. Perhaps the chief could speak to that.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, Your Worship. Yes, it is part of our capital projects for 2018. It's a phased-in approach to upgrade all of our SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus to the new NFPA standards. So this is the second part of the phase. We do have one again next year as part of our plan, and that will complete the upgrades to our self-contained breathing apparatus.
Any other question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor O'Neill, you have another?
Yes, sir. I move that council declare 20 sets of Starfield Lion bunker gear as surplus as the end of useful life and has been reached for safety, and authorize the donation of this equipment to the Dominican Missions Team Life Aid.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Tower. Again, this is
again, as part of our upgrades to our PPE, the firefighters, we have certain shelf lives for certain pieces of equipment. These pieces of equipment have reached their shelf life 10 to 12 years in age, pardon me, and so we've taken them out of active duty, and there's no value to them anymore because they are out of service. That being said, there is less fortunate countries that would love to have this stuff to help them assist with their firefighting efforts. So we're working with a fire department in Kokan that looks after shipping these goods overseas.
Thank you. Question? Oh, Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Just a quick question. If they've ended their useful life, are we doing anybody any favors by donating them?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That's a very good question. Yes, they're looking for anything they can for as far as PPE, because a lot of fire departments do not have anything as it relates to their suppression activities. So whether it be bunker gear, helmets, boots, structural firefighting helmets, they're willing to take anything they can to put clothing on their firefighters.
Councillor Finney?
Is the lifespan for ours, like you said, is something like 10 years? Is that our legislation, and that's why we can't have it any longer, or that's the life expectancy of it?
Thank you, Councillor Finney. We do follow rules of NFPA standards as it relates to PPE and all other pieces of equipment within the fire service. And currently, right now, we do follow a 10-year shelf life for our gear. There's no written rule of when the gear needs to be taken out of service. However, our helmets, gloves, boots, etc., all follow that 10-year end of shelf life.
So there's still safety for these other people.
They still do have life left in them. However, we choose not to keep them within our inventory. Yep.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor O'Neill, you have one that we added earlier?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We're just made aware of the reason for this motion. I'll read the motion and then I'll ask the chief if he would speak on it. I move that council authorize the required repairs to the fire department communications site on Nova Communications to a maximum amount of $12,535.28, including HST.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Finney. Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a bit of background. It was advised on late Friday afternoon from Nova Communications of our on-site technician that we have some communication concerns within our equipment that we have on site. We recently had taken a lightning strike, which hit our antenna. This has happened more than once. So right now, our antenna has been compromised, and we're not sure the extent of the damage until we have riggers in the air to identify if the cabling going down into our repeater within our Bell site has been compromised as well. The budgetary, or the number, I shouldn't say budgetary number, the number that has been proposed tonight is worst case scenario. It's proposed to have the work done over an extended period of time. However, if that time frame is shrunk, depending on the damage to the equipment, that will be less if there's a less repair that's needed.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I'm just curious, is it that it's not working at all, or it's not working optimally, or like what is the situation? And if we were to not do this, what would the effect be?
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Or Councillor Evans, sorry. It is working at capacity right now. However, there is a weakness in the wattage of our repeater. It's only working about half capacity. However, communications in the safety of our firefighters will be maintained. We do recognize that going long term with not fixing the problem, it's going to create further damage to the system.
So I guess
Councillor Evans?
I just have a follow-up for the treasurer then. Is this like the axle for the front end loader? Is this something we're going to spend money that we don't have and we'll deal with it? Can you explain the implications?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Evans. I was going to say the same name. The money is not budgeted. There is money budgeted within the fire department operational budget for repairs to mobile equipment, not to this amount. In discussions which I had with Craig on Friday, is that they need to look within their own operational budget first, if there's things that are more a want than a need, then they will be put off till future budget years. So yes, it will be, some of this will be over budget, cause that account to go over budget, and we will monitor it and work towards finding it within the fire department first, and then outside of that, balancing it within other accounts throughout the operational budget for the town.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. And you're moving into police report, I believe.
I guess that's me again. Generally, Councillor Minton does this one, but I'll try to fill in a little bit here for her. The first one is the police services report, and the sergeant tells us that in the past month, the overall number of calls for service in the detachment were slightly higher than last year. They had 120 versus 111 this year. Property crime is on the rise. Over the Labor Day weekend, there were some break-ins, enters, and thefts, as well as other thefts in town. And when we talked the other day, he just felt that everybody should be really mindful to make sure that they check their doors and their windows at nighttime, because that seems to be when people decide they're going to check to see if they can get into places a lot or not. They continued involvement in the Community Partnership Committee. He attended Mount Allison events to promote the I'm a Good Neighbor campaign, and this campaign focuses on promoting positive relationships between the residents, both permanent residents and students. The CPO provided a presentation to other municipal contract holders in the province at the J Division Commanding Officers meeting. The presentation provided information on the position and value to the community. Also related to training, some officers are getting training related to the drug-related impaired driving detection, and RCMP training course on cannabis legislation is now on internal online training network. Uniformed members conducted 5 check stops and wrote 11 tickets in the town. And I also have quite a long report here, but from the CPO, but I won't really go over too much of it. He just seems to be a busy man, and anywheres I guess that he feels that he can be of service to our community, he's there. He works with a lot of youth, as well as he has Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Sackville Bicycle Registration Program, Youth and Adult Diversion Committees, Block Parent Programs, Crime Stoppers, and he's just a gift to our town for the work that he does for us. So I think that's all that I'll give on that report, Your Worship.
Any questions for the report on policing? Hearing none. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. We'll move to item H, policy bylaws. Councillor Black, please.
Thank you. The policy and bylaw report is on page 41 of the package. We did not meet in August, but there is a report. As noted last month, the new Local Governance Act requires municipalities to have a policing bylaw, which staff have been working on and are continuing to research and gather information on municipalities' policing services. The clerk's office also continues to draft an operating procedure for the maintenance of personal information as a follow-up to a training session, which was attended on the protection of privacy. The clerk's office, with the assistance of all departments, have begun to compile a master file of all forms used by each department, and in the coming months work towards a consistent format of any town-issued forms. And finally, the clerk's office is continuing to work on the drafting of substance abuse policy to have in place with the pending legalization of cannabis. And that's the report.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you. We'll move into personnel report. Councillor Black, please.
Thank you again. The personnel report is on page 42 of the package. We did meet on September 6th. As of last pay period in August, there were 35 permanent employees and 35 summer students. The town is currently conducting a hiring process for the arena attendant position and the bylaw enforcement officer, which we anticipate filling in the near future.
Question? Thank you, Councillor Black. No motions. Move to item J, Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report appears on page 43. This liaison group had our meeting on August 29th. And a kickoff meeting of the town's new business development strategy was held on August 22nd with members of Lionsgate Consulting and 4L Strategies Consulting. And this is part of our this is 2018 priority on our strategic plan. The strategy is expected to review our organizational structure as it pertains to economic development, examine past and current approaches used by the town, review best practices and partnership opportunities, identify priorities, and provide tactics and measurements for the community economic development work of the town. The consultants are currently completing literature review before moving on to an internal audit of the town's current organizational structure and approaches. Several staff members met with Main Street redevelopment to discuss the town's approach to 2-hour parking, signage, and Christmas lighting. Staff are following up on several initiatives in cooperation with Main Street, including enhanced signage and additional lighting options. It's a little dated now, but further to the Sackville Tribune article, the number of businesses were invited to an open house at the Via Rail Station that occurred tonight from 2 to 6 p.m. this afternoon, I guess. As presented during our special council meeting of September 4th, our engineering consultants are currently moving forward with a revised design of the Lawrence Street Phase 2, following original tender closing. Once the engineering design and tender package process are completed, a public information meeting will be held to discuss the anticipated start date, construction schedule, neighborhood disruptions, etc. And staff are currently reviewing the details of the federal government's integrated bilateral agreement for investing in Canada infrastructure program. And under this program, New Brunswick will receive $347.2 million for green infrastructure over the next 10 years, with several funding streams available, including green infrastructure, community, culture and recreation, public transit, and rural and northern communities. We expect a call for applications in the late fall. And the 2018 Atlantic Planners Institute Conference will take place in Moncton on October 24th to 26th. Which staff are helping to organize. The conference will feature keynote speakers, including Dr. Avi Friedman from McGill University, who will discuss innovative, sustainable communities around the world, and Emmanuel Mikado, the CAO of Gibson's BC, who will be speaking about incorporating ecosystem services into municipal regulations. The conference will include mobile workshops, a change in management stream, training for planning and review and adjustment committee members, as well as other topics. And finally, the Community Partnerships Working Group met on August 14th. The meeting provided an opportunity to meet the new Mount Allison Student Union executive members, the new 2018 Orientation Chair, discuss citizen recruiting, and plans for Mount Allison's 2018 orientation and homecoming activities. The group started the school year with a public awareness campaign to help raise the profile of the group's mandate with stickers and magnets, which were distributed during orientation activities. And another meeting is scheduled this fall. And that's the report, Your Worship, and there are no motions.
Questions on the strategic report? Hearing none. And there are no motions. We move to new business. There were no new business added, so we move to question period. Mr. Work.
Just want to be sure that I have the order correct on page 34, the capital projects. I have them written down, the 5 boxes. And so from the top, it would be 3, 2, 5, 4, and 1. I just want to make sure that's right. Oh.
5 becomes 1.
5, 2. If you go down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We read them in different order.
No, I'm reading from the top, Councillor Tower. So from the top, 3, 2,
5. Exit 506 becomes number 1 at the top.
okay.
He's reading in a different order.
I'm reading from the boxes from the top down. So.
Oh, okay. From the previous boxes. Okay. So
yes.
number 1 becomes number
3.
Yeah. You've got it. Go ahead.
Number.
I believe you're correct, Bruce.
Yeah.
If you want to repeat it one more time, but.
Yeah, 3, 2, 5, 4, and 1. Okay, thank you very much. I just would like a little bit more information, if it's available, on the Lawrence Street Phase 2. The timing of, is there any estimate for when the public information meeting may be held, or when the consultants and the town will be ready to move ahead to that meeting?
I don't think we have a time as yet. I think it's a matter of when the products are coming, plus at the same time we're asking about money to proceed on the other. So I think there are 2 things going on right now, and at some point only one of them is going to emerge. But at this point we're not in charge of that schedule, so no, there's no definitive date yet on either.
So it's still an open question on the money, whether, you know, you're in the meantime, you're going ahead and applying for more money in hopes of being able to do Plan A.
Correct.
And if not, then you'll do
Plan B.
Plan B. Okay, thank you. I didn't really understand that. And my final question has to do, I'm curious about the substance abuse policy with the cannabis legislation. What would that involve? What kind of policy is that?
Who wants to speak to that? Who's in that committee?
Haven't had any samples yet, but anyways, currently the clerk's office has reached out to the various municipalities in all of New Brunswick looking to see where everyone is, and to date we are still, you know, there hasn't been much information come back at this point, so we're still looking to gather as much as we can, and management will be meeting on it in the next few weeks to try and put something together in terms of what we think is required to address, you know, address whatever concerns are out there. So it's still a work in progress.
Is it related to smoking bylaws or anything like that?
Mostly within the organization, it'd be almost like substance abuse, whether it be, if you want to, in my opinion at least, it's like alcohol usage within the workplace. How would that work? So if it's you know, cannabis within the workplace, what would be the implications or concerns that would have for the organization, whether someone's had too much, whether they need it from a medical perspective, driving or operating equipment, and yet you have it prescribed by your doctor. Where does that put the organization? We're not looking to put employees or public citizens at risk, so I think there's things that we need to explore a little bit before we say what the policy should be or shouldn't be. And so we're in need of assistance, and I think a month or so ago the council passed a motion to reach out to the province seeking information on this, and there's not a lot out there to say this is what and how we're going to interpret it. We've seen and heard schools talk about a number of plants in apartments or being residents, and how the police will handle that or not handle that, and or the universities will handle that. And I don't think everyone's the same. So it's a crapshoot.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, Mr. Wark, we did write a letter to the Minister of Health asking for them to hold an information session, because there is such a wide range of questions, some of which are town questions, but many of which are not. So we haven't got an answer to that, but we hope we'll get one. Okay, other questions from the audience?
This will be an easy one. Page 23 of the Statement of Expenditures and Revenues. Understanding it's unaudited, unadjusted. I was just curious about the Parks and Recreation Facilities year-to-date number has gone down by 9,000. Is something transposed from the end of July, or did we refund somebody some money?
Mr. Beal? Yeah,
that was a refund. We were balancing off the accounts of who owed money, ending the previous season, which ended last March, April. And there was a duplicate invoice that had been for one of the clients that had to be reversed.
Okay. Not a question, but the councillor asked about the King's Landing passes. When I went to the library, you go in, you get your card, and they give you a admission pass, and they said it's only good for the month of September. And you have to take your card with you.
Okay, thank you. So we're also getting answers from the audience. So that's good. So, any other questions? Okay, we'll have entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, folks. Council.